On this episode of This is Game Boy Lite, we defend Fairy Tale Land with a parasol? Hello everyone and welcome to another fun-filled adventure with this light episode of This is Game Boy. I'm eBloodyCandy, and before we fly into action, just a quick overview of what I have been up to for the last month and a half, 2 months. We'll start with the video games first. I have played and beaten Metroid Dread, Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered with a Platinum Trophy, Assassin's Creed 3 DLC, The Tyranny of King Washington, Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion for the Nintendo Switch, Days Before Christmas for the Super Nintendo, Lunar Journey, a homebrew Game Boy game by Green Boy Games, Doraemon Nobita no Dora Beyond Night for the TurboGrafx 16, Darkwing Duck for the TurboGrafx 16, Sailor Moon for the Game Gear, and The Bunker for Haunt Hunters on PC. I haven't been, and on top of that, WoW Classic. Let's just be fair on that one. So I've been busy with video game stuff. Even though I don't stream all that much anymore, not as much as I'd want to, we are still pushing through some video games. Side project. I recently got a hold of a Mister. The Mr. FPGA. If you don't know what a Mister is, it's like this little box about the size of a cigarette packet, maybe as tall as 2 cigarette packets. It's like this little itty bitty computer that emulates console hardware, so I'm able to do things like MSX and TurboGrafx and Sega CD and things of that nature. So I have literally probably 100 times increased my range of retro games now because of this little thing, and I have been having a ball with it for about a month. And the quality is none other, so probably one of the best things I've done in the last 2 months. Going through a bit of a channel rebranding, not so much renaming the channel, obviously, but just getting art and colors consistent across the board. Because right now, if you look at my HD stuff, everything is kind of a realistic tone, but if you look at my retro stuff, it's super minimalistic, and yeah. So just trying to get everything under one umbrella, kind of looking sort of similar. I finished reading the Kirby manga Volume 1, so I'm going into Volume 2 here now. And a lot of behind-the-scenes talking and planning for a secret announcement coming up about the podcast. So definitely keep your eyes and ears open for that. So with that, let's spin our parasol and explore the world of Fairy Tale Land after this short break. Alright, so before we can dive into the actual game of Parasol Henbee, we need to really look at the roots of Parasol Henbee. So Parasol Henbee started off as a Japanese anime running from 1989 to 1991. 20-minute episodes that ran for 200 episodes in total. A lot of translations would come with this anime. Chinese, Hebrew, Spanish, Portuguese, and Arabic. The anime was created by Fujiko Fujio, which y'all might better know him for Doraemon and Poco Neon. Especially Doraemon. Parasol Henbee would later be adapted into a manga, and it consists of 2 volumes that were published in 1991. I believe it was in the Bon Bon magazine. Parasol Henbee will also go on to grace 2 Nintendo products, the Famicom and the Game Boy, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But before diving into the actual games, we need to understand what a Parasol Henbee is and why it was transformed into multiple media formats. Henbei is described as a small talking pink hippopotamus-like creature, and he is the main character of the show. So the anime plot is this. While playing in his world, Henbei fell down through a tunnel in a waterfall and woke up in the human world inside a closet of a kid named Maruko. The tunnel is closed, preventing him from returning to his home world. Henbei possesses a magical parasol, and with it he can fly and do magic. He also can speak to animals and fulfill everyone's dreams. Soon, Henbei and Maruko become friends, and Henbei gets to help him out while staying at Maruko's house. Occasionally, the tunnel back to his homeworld opens, and animals and friends from his homeworld come through. Later, when Henbei gets the chance to return to his homeworld, he hesitates due to his friendship with Maruko. Later in the series, however, Henbei and Maruko travel to his homeworld with Henbei's magical parasol. Alright, so now that we know the story behind Parasol Henbee, what does it have to do with the games? Well, since this is a Game Boy podcast, I'll just mention that there is a Famicom game with a English translation ROM hack. Have at it. But for the Game Boy people, this game has absolutely nothing to do with the anime. With the exception of the main character and a parasol. So Parasol Henbee for the Game Boy was released in November 16th, 1990, developed by SAS Sakata and published by Epoch. SAS Sakata might be better known for its NES hits like Bump and Jump, Karate Champ, and Boulder Dash, while Epoch might be a bit more known for its Super Cassette Division releases in the early 80s, Psy-Raid for the Game Boy, and Kitaretsu for the NES. Parasol Henbee is a extremely basic game that is almost an exact ripoff of Chubby Cherub for the NES. If you've made a few sprite changes to Henbei and a few sprite changes to the enemies at hand, you would literally have a Chubby Cherub port for the Game Boy. The goal of the game is very simple. Go to the end of the stage. Go from left to right. And the stages are varied between a cityscape, your forest, your caves, a construction yard, and the sky. You play as Henbei, and you'll notice that at the start of the game, your UI is at the top of the screen instead of the bottom, which is a harsh difference compared to most games. But you have a power bar or a health bar in the center of your screen at the top. But it's only half full when you start the game. Or when you die and start a stage over, it's only half full. Something that makes this game very interesting is how Henbei actually reacts to the health bar. If you allow your health bar to drop too low, Henbei becomes very sluggish. The appearance of Henbei's sprite actually alters as well too, in a drooping, more depressing manner, allowing Henbei to not really jump, move extremely slow, and not allow you to climb the poles in the city stages. So it is very important to keep your health managed. However, though, if you do keep your health up fairly high, you are very reactive. Henbei moves at normal speed, can jump, can float around as parasol, can climb beams in the city, can do whatever you very much want with Henbei. Something else that makes this very interesting as well too with the health bar is that when your health bar is full or near full, you are able to press up on your D-pad when you are jumping, and you can actually fly with your parasol. If you're only half health or around half health, Henbei won't be able to fly with his parasol, but only gently glide down with the parasol, which does make landing a bit awkward because the edges are a bit slippery on platforms, and the way that Henbei floats down is that Henbei swings erratically left and right while floating down on the parasol. But to keep your health bar up, you do this by eating food throughout the stage, and there is a ton of food throughout the stage. And your food can be anything from a giant ice cream cone to a rice ball, to a tiny mushroom, to pretty much anything your heart desires. If it looks like food, Henbee can eat it and gain a little bit of health. Much like Chubby Cherub, you eat food to maintain your health bar. However, when you do use the flight mechanic with Henbee, your health bar does drain slowly. Henbee can be hurt by various animals in the game. So like we mentioned, like Henbee can talk to animals, but he can't talk to animals in the video game. I'm sure like they had to find some sort of tie-in to Parasol Henbee because like there's just nothing else there in the game that connects it to the anime. So the animals can hurt Henbee, which does drain the health bar a bit. Henbee does have an attack. He has a violent spin attack. It's kind of out of control that he can use to knock the animals off the screen. However, spinning does take away health from your health bar. So pretty much any action that Henbee does, with the exception of walking and jumping, takes away from your health bar. So at this point, you're pretty much just like, you know what? I'm going to be a pacifist and just not even worry about spinning into these animals at all. While you're jumping around, sometimes you'll want to use the glide of the parasol, or sometimes you'll accidentally hit up and start gliding. You can simply press down while you have the parasol open, and Henbee will drop down to the, well, either hopefully the ground, but he may drop into a pit, depending on where you are. Something else that makes this game fairly interesting too is that it takes more of like a Z-axis approach, or like a 3D plane approach to this. Think of like Double Dragon, where you have a close-up, like you have level 1, which is, you know, as close to the bottom of the screen as possible, then a level 2, which is like in the middle, and then a level 3, which is, you know, quote-unquote further away. This game takes a very similar approach to that, where Henbee can actually move on 2 planes, like close and a first and a second plane. But in the cityscape, it actually can take on a 3rd plane. So when you climb up these poles in the cityscape, you can actually walk across these walls or these fences that allow you to basically, quote-unquote, access a 3rd plane, which is where most of the time you're going to find your food in the cityscape stages. This is where the controls do get a bit clumsy, however. When Henbee is on the ground, you are able to move between level 1 and level 2, sometimes level 3 depending on your stage. So you have a lot more maneuverability going through the actual stages themselves. However, when you're in the air and you're just plain jumping, or if you have your parasol open, you can't move between the different levels of the plane. So if you jumped and used your parasol on level 1 plane, you are stuck on the level 1 plane until Henbee reaches the ground again. It's actually a giant pain, especially in the later stages, especially the later ice cave stages, because some of those pits are not for the faint of heart, and they definitely are beginner traps. Parasol Henbee consists of about 15 stages. It's a really interesting map the way you see it. So when you first start out the game, you get to see 10 stages right away. So you're thinking to yourself, oh, this game only has 10 stages. This is awesome. As you get to the 10th stage and beat the 10th stage, the world map starts to scroll to the left or the right, however you want to describe it. It moves to the left so you can see the right side of the map. There you go. And you'll notice that there are about 5 more stages left in the game. So it's actually a kind of a fun little treat, because I personally like this game quite a bit. So it was a nice little treat to see if there was actually more game to what was actually being revealed to me. We'll talk about the later stages in a minute, though, because there is some weirdness with them. The sprite work for the game is actually pretty amateurish, I would say. When I say the sprite work, I mean like the actual like animated sprites. So like the squirrels, the monkeys, the snakes, the cats. Henbee looks great. The parasol looks great, but really everything else that you interact with doesn't look all that good, with the exception of the final boss, which we'll talk about in a minute. So like the actual like actionable like NPCs don't look all that good. They look very amateur for 1991. However, the actual level work like the background, the foreground, the objects you jump on and jump over, just like the different textures throughout the actual stages look phenomenal. So you can definitely tell that the artists were probably a lot more comfortable dealing with background or larger sprites than they were with small miniature NPCs. Which is a shame, however, because you only get to, like, since the levels are so short, you don't really get to embrace the atmosphere of these stages all that well, because, like, the stages, like I said, are gorgeously done in terms of, like, the actual, like, atmosphere artwork. It's just a real shame that you don't really get to immerse yourself into it. So between these stages, you do get to play a bonus game, where you can kind of think of like Kid Icarus, where you go into the side rooms and you have to flip over the hats. It's very similar to that, where in this bonus stage you flip over a hat and you can get a ton. You can get a ton of food, a ton of 1-ups. But as soon as you hit the side raid moon monster, your bonus game is over. So there is some deep lore with the side raid, since the publisher did do side raid. The levels are very basic. You have your pitfalls that you can jump over or hop onto moving platforms, or if you have enough health, you literally just fly over them. There are slippery surfaces, especially in the cave, and there are hills that do alter Henbee's speed. So walking up a hill is slow, but going down a hill is very fast. As we approach the final stages of the game decides to throw boss fights at us, which throughout the entirety of the game, the first 12, 13 stages of the game, your whole purpose was to avoid enemies and not touch them. And now, all of a sudden, you're thrown into a boss fight where you have to understand how to damage enemies. So the game doesn't do a good job like transitioning into this at all, and can make first-time players very much not like this piece of the game. But the first boss you encounter are two hogs in one of the final 4 stages, and they charge back and forth on both planes. And what you need to do is that you need to spin into a hog to quote-unquote stun it, and then you have to jump on top of it to ride it off the screen. Never had to do that before in any of the previous stages in this game. Until now. So, sure hope you're open to experimenting if you've never gotten to this before. The next boss you encounter is a giant monkey that looks like Spanky. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a giant monkey that looks like Spanky. And behind him is a boulder blocking the exit of the cave. What you need to do is that you need to be on the lowest plane, or what I call plane 1. And you need to spin and tack into the boulder while dodging falling debris. It sounds easy. It's actually super hectic because the screen is shaking as well. It's probably the more hectic of the 3 bosses you will have to fight. And then the final boss is a lightning god. So you go through a final sky stage. You get to ride some rainbows, which is actually super fun. Dodge some rainfalls and lightning. Get a few 1-ups. A lot of flying in this stage with your parasol, so I hope you have a lot of food built up. But you do face off against a lightning god at the end that is riding on a cloud with orbs around him. So your first instinct is to think that you need to hit these orbs that are around this boss to knock them away from him to attack him, because that's how video game logic works for us from all these years. Not in this case, however. The floating cloud that the boss is on is a slightly different color than really anything else in the screen. So you need to spin attack the cloud that the god is riding on, and once you've destroyed the cloud, the boss just falls off the screen and dies. And there's a trick to this, is that there's a bottom cloud for like a floor, and then right above it there's like a tier 1 or a tier 2 cloud that's kind of long. If you just stand there with Henbee and just spin when the boss gets close to you, You never have to chase the boss at all. It just comes to you and you can just hit it. It's super safe and it's really easy to take out the boss. Once you've taken out the boss, try not to fall into any pits. And then there's going to be a bird to the right-hand side. You approach the bird, and you and the bird fly off into the sunset. Bird and Parasol Hole. And you're probably thinking to yourself, where the hell does this bird come from? Well, on the box art of the game, you have Henbee on the right-hand side holding his parasol. And on the left-hand side is this little yellow bird. There's the connection. And then there's a rainbow in the background, which you do get to ride on during the sky stages. And behind the rainbow is just the town, basically where Maruko is and where Henbee ends up. The box art is very much either taken from it's not taken from a scene in anime, but like pieces of it were clipped away and placed into this from the anime 100%. It definitely looks like a cover that could be on a manga. So yeah, the game itself didn't get all that good views or good reviews, and especially in the later years, like recent history, we're talking like the 2000s, the anime has even come under a lot of negative reviews as well too. So even though the anime ran for 200 episodes in 1989 to 1991, in today's day, the anime just isn't that well received anymore. I watched a quick like 10-minute clip of it because it was actually really hard to find a clip of this anime. And it doesn't age well. Let's just say that. It did not age well. It didn't age as well as Dragon Ball or something. Which is too bad. But the game isn't bad. I personally thought this game was fine. It was very much on the short side. I think blind with a game over, it took me 40 to 45 minutes. So it's a very short game. And it does have a lot of clunkiness to it. I would grade it like middle low on the scale, most because of how short the game is, how basic the game is, and just like the sprite, like the NPC sprite work just isn't that good. I would recommend it though, even though like I wouldn't grade it super high. I would recommend people to play this game. It's pretty cute. It has a decent OST with a nice aesthetic to it. Like I said, with the actual level sprite work. I came across this during my retro playthroughs when I was just like browsing to see what game I kind of want to play, and I came across Parasol Henbee, and I remember I think it was Moelle talking about it. So I opened it up, played it. I was like, oh, this is kind of a fun game. And I was pretty happy that I played it. So if you have like a quick hour and you're looking for something to play, like check out Parasol Henbee. It's not a terrible game. It's just a very short game that kind of leaves you wanting a bit more from it. It's almost like Trip World. So, but yeah, with that, we're going to take another quick break. And when I come back, we're going to talk about some upcoming events, which is pretty light right now since we're just starting the new year. And we'll talk about what's going to go on with the next episode. So stay tuned. Alright, welcome back everybody. Upcoming events. The most recent event we have coming up probably is ESA Winter 2022, which is starting February 12th. So probably a couple weeks by the time when this episode comes out. Another thing to keep in mind, if you are in America and around the Midwest, or if you just want to have a vacation to the Midwest for some unknown reason, Mid-Spring Speed Fling 2022 will be happening April 1st through April 3rd, and this will be an on-site event. So yeah. super, super early, super, super, super future. But if you are planning on wanting to go to an on-site event, VGM Con is hosting Midwest Speed Fest, which they do almost every year. And Midwest Speed Fest is an absolutely phenomenal group of people. I've had the pleasure to run Kirby's Dream Land for them, and I've had the pleasure of doing basically a Shaq Fu relay with some of the staff from Midwest Speed Fest, and they are just just a gem to work with, awesome to talk to, and it's super friendly people. I absolutely love the team. And they're based out of Minnesota, so they're only like 20 minutes away from me. So I might be biased on that. So yeah, with that, we're going to call it there. A bit of a short, light episode, but, it is a short game. So, with that, I am eBloodyCandy. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, at eBloodyCandy. You can find my awesome co-host Moelle, Moelleuh, on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube, and Instagram. And you can find our awesome, wonderful, gorgeous producer, Legs, at SprintingLegs on Twitch and Twitter, Legs on YouTube, and definitely check out her project website, www.sprintinglegs.com, where you can see all of her work projects, along with the Game Boy Manual database. Along with that, we have a Patreon. If you would like to support the podcast monetarily, we do have a Patreon where you can subscribe. There are various tiers. However, some of the rewards are going to change with the upcoming announcement that we're still in the talks on how we want to showcase it to you all. But something cool with the Patreon is that you get to see our notes, you get to hear some bloopers, and you have pretty much an all-exclusive premiere pass to the upcoming Haunt Hunter episodes, which when this episode comes out, you should have access to The Bunker, where I play as John and guide him through basically a nuclear holocaust. So if you're into horror games, it plays as like an 80s slasher movie. It's actually pretty dope. What else we got? Blah, 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 blah. Oh, if Patreon isn't your thing, subscription-based, everything is subscription-based nowadays. People forget that they have subscriptions. I get it. We do have a PayPal. However, if you do support us through PayPal, please let one of the three of us know. We want to thank you in some way or another. And we can't connect Discord to PayPal, so there's just that whole thing going on there. So please let us know. We want to thank you. Because we probably never thought in a million years this would ever happen. Keep going on the money side of things. We got a merch store, merch.thisisgameboy.com. I believe that's the URL. If not, well, it's on the website somewhere, which we'll get to in a second. But merch store, we got t-shirts, coffee cups. Yeah. The shirts are nice. I own 2 of the quote-unquote limited edition t-shirts. They're nice. If you're familiar with Hanes or Gilded t-shirts, basically that's what they are. I got like the Hanes like workforce t-shirt on one of them, and like just like a Gilded undershirt on one, and they're both phenomenal. They've been through the wash like 3 or 4 times. The print is still in contact. It's good. And I do have a coffee cup. It sits on my shelf in the back. I think it has a nail in it right now because I pulled a nail out of the wall. So it's a holder for random stuff right now. So if you're looking for a random paperweight, the coffee cup is great. We may have some more merch coming down the line in the future. I need to talk to Mo about potentially getting some more stuff out there. If spending money isn't your thing, I super 100% get that, because I don't like spending money on a lot of things either. But if that's not, just listening to the podcast is support enough, honestly. the fact that we get the amount of listens that we have right now blows my mind. I never thought in a million years that we'd ever approach the amount of listens that we have now. And hell, some people have left reviews, 5-star reviews even, for the podcast on various other podcast sites like Apple Podcast. So leaving a review, listening, and just talking to us in Discord or Twitch or whatever, like super awesome support in itself, and we love to hear it, and we love talking to our fans and listeners and audience in general for this. So thank you all for listening to our podcast and listening to two old men ramble about things from the early 90s and can't move on with their lives. Well, I don't even know what else we have. Oh, and you can find all this information. Before we do that, we have YouTube. So like if SoundCloud, yada yada yada, isn't your thing, all this stuff is actually on YouTube in video format. So you can actually see a little gameplay snippet of the game being played while Mo and I talk about the game with some little like wavelengths and stuff happening. It's actually pretty damn cool. They put a lot of time. Legs and Mo put a lot of time into it. But yeah, you can find all that information and more on thisisgameboy.com or gbrunners.com/TIGB. With that is the end of this light episode. Thank you all for listening to Parasol Henbee. The next time you hear from me, I will be graced with Moelle, and we will be talking about Metroid 2. Until next time, bye-bye. Alright. Hello everyone and welcome. Right, I said my microphone. Let's try that one again.